In this video, we will cover three concepts related to positioning of grid and grid items. First one is place content. These utilities position the grid content as a whole. Then place items. These utilities place the individual items both horizontally and vertically in their respective grid areas. Then place self. These utilities help us to custom place a single grid item irrespective of the position of all the grid items. Firstly, coming to the place content utilities, they control the position of the entire content of a grid layout. Tailwind claims that we can position all the grid elements as a whole, both horizontally and vertically at the same time, but in reality, we can only position vertically. We will see why in a bit. If you see Tailwind documentation, in the place content utilities, you can see that if you use place content center, the items will be arranged like this, and they gave the code for that like this. They gave two columns, grid calls 2, and then they are using place content center and they gave a height, but this is not true. In fact, let me go to the developer tools and click on this area and expand this. Here you can see that they are not using grid calls 2, they are using a custom grid utility using repeat to 56 pixels. This means Tailwind is telling to create two columns, each with 56 pixels. And if you know this width 14 and height 14, this is Tailwind unit 14. But if you actually see, it is 56 pixels exactly, as you can see on the top. Let me do that again. If I hover on this element, you can see the size 56 by 56. So two columns, each 56, and they gave the element also exactly the same width and height, so they are exactly fitting it, and that's why it is in the center. But if they don't give this 56 pixels, or if they don't match this tailwind unit to this 56 pixel, this is not the output you get. So I just wanted to put that out. When I started learning, I used the same code and I was not understanding why it doesn't work, why I don't get the same output. So I just wanted to clarify that. Now we will see how in reality it looks like when you use these utilities. So here I am. Inside the body, I have a grid container which has three columns and a height of 56. And then I have six elements inside it. Just to look clean, I collapsed all the elements. It's the same styling for everything. So this is how the default layout looks like, the grid layout without any place content utilities. Now let me add each place content utility so you will see the difference. First we'll add place content start and save it. Now you can see that all the elements are at the top now. By default, when we use grid calls utility, it occupies the entire width and height available for that particular grid. We have given height 56, but we did not give width. Let me give width. You can see that the elements are automatically occupying all the width. That is why the example shown in the documentation doesn't work, because when you use grid calls 3, it automatically occupies the full space available. So now let me add a place content end, and you might have expected it should be at the end of that grid. Then center. This is the center. You can see that all the items are being positioned together, not individual items. And when you use between, the items are scattered across the edges. And when you use around, there should be even spacing around the elements. Now you can see that there is even spacing on the top and bottom. Here this is the exact middle point. Let me open the developer tools. You can see that each element has same space on the top and bottom. Since this is the mid area of two elements, the bottom of one and the top of four are together, that's why there is more space here. but if you see around a single element, it is the same space. And for the same reason of the width, it is occupying the entire width. That's why you are not seeing on the right side of the third element here, and also the left side beside one, you don't see it. But generally how it should work according to Tailwind documentation, as they claim, is that this space that is there on the top and bottom should also be there on the left and right. But this is how it works in general. In case if you are wondering how to get that output, please let me know in the comments. I can make a separate video on that, how to achieve that. The beauty of custom utilities is that we can get the output we want by using several utilities, not just place content utilities. Once you practice enough and know enough utilities, you can always experiment with them and get the output you want. This is not like a strict rule you have to follow to get something. So that's about place content utilities. Now let's check the place items utilities. These are used to align items within their grid cells. It allows for precise control over how individual elements are aligned within the grid, both horizontally and vertically. Let me remove the place content around and keep the item center just for demonstration. Now I'll expand all the child elements. Let me simplify this. If you don't know how to edit in multi-line, just press Alt and click wherever you want to add the class. In that way, we can add classes to all the elements at the same time. So in order to use the place items utilities, first we need to have the height and width for each element, because as I said, the default behavior of the elements is to occupy the entire height and width that is available. So if we don't use a particular height and width for an element, we can't see how they are positioned inside the grid area. So I'll give a height of 10 and width of 10 and save. Now you can see the elements have exactly height and width of 10 points. They're still big. So let me reduce the size even. Maybe I'll just put 6 and save. I'll also make the text small. Okay, now I think we can see placement better. In the parent container, let's add a place items center and save it. Now you can see that the entire grid content position is same. However, the elements inside those grid areas have changed. Same way, if I use grid items start, they'll go to the start position, and if I use grid items end, they will be in the end position. Lastly, the place self utilities. They work like place items but only apply to the individual grid item rather than all items within the grid. You can use this utility when you want to override the default alignment for a specific grid item. For example, here we have all the items positioned to the end because of the place items end. Now, if you want a certain element to be in a different position, then you can use the place self utilities. For example, I want the first element to be in the starting position and fourth element to be in the center position. So now we make the changes inside the element. For place content and place items, we use the classes inside the parent class. But now, since we have to make the changes individually, we have to make the changes in the child element. So here I'll use place self start and save. You can see only the first item is in the starting position now, but remaining all 5 are in the ending position as we mentioned in the parent class. So I want the second element to be in the center. So I'll just write place self and center and save it. As you can see, second element is in the center position. So like this, you can use also place self end, but since all are in the end, you will not see difference. So let's make this start for now and save it. Now all the items are in start position except the second element which has place self center. Now you can use place self end. So maybe for the third element, I'll use place self end and save it. And you can see that the third element is at the end position. So this is how you use place content, place items, and place self utilities together to get the required output you want. If you haven't watched my bento grid tutorial, this is the perfect time to watch it and practice grid utilities and make a beautiful bento grid. The link to the tutorial is in the description and also on the top right corner. That's all for this video. In the coming videos, we will explore the concepts related to sizing and spacing of elements in Tailwind CSS. See you there.